Hallo, ihr alle.
Hello, you say hello, you say tschüss.
Frohes neues Jahr. So, herzlich willkommen. Ich bin Anne Leppin. Neben mir ist Maria Köpf. Wir beide begrüßen euch zum 18. Kinotalk und wir freuen uns sehr, dass wir heute so hochkarätige Gäste haben. Das Gespräch wird ungefähr 1 Stunde gehen. Wenn ihr Fragen habt, stellt sie gerne in den Chat auf Deutsch oder Englisch und wir schauen, dass wir dann in der letzten Viertelstunde Zeit haben, die zu beantworten. Und schön, dass unser Präsident Florian Gallenberger heute das Gespräch übernehmen wird. Hallo Florian.
Hallo Anne.
Ja, du hast ja zu Mexiko und auch zu den Oscars eine ganz besondere Beziehung durch deinen ersten Film Quercerer. Und wir hoffen, wir danken dir sehr, dass du das Gespräch übernimmst. Und Maria wird jetzt unsere internationalen Gäste begrüßen.
Hello and hola.
Hola, hola a todos.
Hola, hola. We are very excited and thrilled to have you both here tonight as our guests. It's really a pleasure and honor. Welcome Alejandro González Iñárritu and Darius Khondji for this talk tonight. As a matter of fact, Alejandro, we've been trying to chase you for a couple of years, wanting to have you as our guests. So this is a very special night for us to have you here to talk about your latest masterpiece, Bardo. Everybody in the room, I guess, knows you. We all love and admire your work. You have received multiple, not only Oscars, Golden Globes, just to mention the most prestigious awards. And it's really an honor and pleasure for us to have you here tonight. Thank you so much for doing this talk with Florian about Bardo. Welcome from all of us with a big heart. Welcome also to Darius, your collaborator on this great film, cinematographer, on this visually stunning and extremely exciting film. Darius, you're in Paris. Welcome from Berlin to you also as well. I know I assume there's a lot of excited DOPs in the audience tonight who are excited to have you here and to be able to talk to you later. So welcome to you as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. Hola, Alejandro. Hi, Darius. I'm very happy that we have the chance to talk about your wonderful film, Bardo. And when I say wonderful, I really think it's a film full of wonders. You know, it's a rich, dense, deeply magical film. And when I saw it, to me, it was sometimes even more than a film. It was more like a meditation that opens new spaces and, you know, seems like an endless space that is surrounding us all the time without that we are really aware of it. And Bardo is a term that comes from Tibet, is a Buddhist term, and it mostly refers to a state of being in between, especially after death, before your next reincarnation. So actually in between two lives. If you see the film, it's very obvious how this in-betweenness relates with the movie, but perhaps you can still tell us how come that in-betweenness is the main subject of your film.
Well, I think that the film, it's basically departs from uncertainty. You know, I think that I am at the stage in my life that I'm at that stage precisely. I just know that I don't know nothing. You know, I suddenly surrender to the fact of demand to have the certainty of things that when you are younger, you think about things should be one way or the other way, and suddenly I think it has to do with the fact that coming closer to the end, you know, you start thinking about it a little bit more often. Since I was a kid, I remember my parents always showing me pictures of them, of friends, or my grandparents, and I saw these pictures of Paris, and suddenly they said, and what about this? Oh, he died. And suddenly I realized that all these people has gone, and I was very clear since I was a kid that I will be someday one of those guys in the picture that I will be gone. So that certainty, in a way, give me the chance for me to have the privilege to imagine my own death, and from there to tell, prioritize things and revise things that I consider that were to share, that I have keep a little bit, and with no certainty about facts or truth, but more from the emotional events that in a way have shaped me and my consciousness and the way I'm seeing and feeling things now and observing and valorated and fears and dreams and feelings with no certainty, but the existence of those elusive material. That's how I depart from this movie. For me, this film was a kind of a phantasmagorical presence, like a shadow that is flying, that we all are shadows, we arrive and then we leave as a shadow and that's it. And I wanted to, in a way, try to have that metaphysical or phantasmagorical presence of things that are happening with no story attached or no facts, but more as a visual, sensorial experience that can make you, in a way, trigger in the audience those same things that I have been now invested in my life, recently.
Well, I think it worked because it triggered all these things in me very much, and they have been working inside of me after I saw the film, and it has been with me for a long time. Now, when you say it's about uncertainty, that is what you feel now at this point in your life. Is that uncertainty a quality, or is it a pain? Is it a step forward in your development? How do you see that?
I think that I have been learning little by little to surrender to that, to embrace uncertainty. And I'm talking about geographically. My wife and I and my kids came 21 years ago to the United States from Mexico. And it's a very different culture and countries, as you know. So it took time for me to understand that I will never belong to this country, that I will never have the chance to really return to my country, even when I want it, that suddenly you are displaced, that you are dislocated, that the contradiction, the paradox, the challenges, and the gifts of an immigrant, no matter what is your situation or circumstances economically, or the success or marginalized, there's something that you die a little when you left your country. There's something that dies, and you have to integrate, disintegrate, and suddenly I was very stubborn to belong, and that sensation to belong, or to be like, or to be like that of people that dislikes you, to be accepted, to be comprehended, to be understood with my dark skin color, being Mexican. I want to prove things. I want to get the recognition or to be accepted. And I think that thanks to a meditation practice that I discovered 10 years ago, I have understood to let go of those things. That those things that I will not control, I will never control what people think about me, what people, I will never convince people. That's not in my hands and my control, and belong to what I always said, that now I understand that my nation is my family. Mm-hmm. And that's the only real ground that I can really hold that is real. All the other things, all the borders are mental, are abstractions. We invent it as human beings to have a sense of belonging, but suddenly surrender and embrace uncertainty, I found it so liberating. So, instead to be fighting with, suddenly just let it go and let yourself fall. And this film, for me, I show my wounds, how fragile, how stupid I am, whatever perception I have. Suddenly, I suddenly was open to show my doubts. Even the film is a doubt. I don't know if it works. It's a story without story. Right. But we were trying to make this blend, walking in the consciousness with no certainty of material. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm sorry that if I may be too philosophical or abstract, another way to make this to be understood. And I found myself the worst guy talking about my film, because
I don't think so. I think you're very good in talking about your film. And I think those thoughts that you're saying is exactly what has been going on in my mind. And I thought I never emigrated. I don't have a background of migration. nevertheless, I felt in between and doubtful all my life. So when you said this now, I thought, if you would have stayed in Mexico, don't you think that you still would be a doubtful person and that you would still be in a space of in-betweenness? Don't you think that's more a character trait than the result of life choices?
No, I think if I would have stayed in Mexico, I would have been another person completely, because I will be living in comfort, in the comfort zone. You know, I will be recognized, praised. I will have lived with bodyguards and cars with security, and my kids will be maybe entitled, and they will be the son of. Here I'm nobody. You know, I'm here another one of 5 million Mexicans that live here. And we are, in that sense, in a way, it's much more liberating. So that, and I have to say that the distance from your country and the distance from your affections and your narratives and your identity, it's a gift, I have to say. So, I mean, at the same time, it helps you to have a perspective in your own and whatever you belong. So I will have been maybe creatively, I will have never done what I have done in my life. I think it's thanks to the distance that I took and the uncomfortable, challenging road.
Let's take a look at the film. I think you have taken a couple of very bold and strong creative choices. Some of them you have taken in earlier films already, but even though you have done something like this in an earlier film, I want to believe that you're not just repeating it, but you're doing it anew for maybe different reasons. So I would like to ask you about the two most obvious choices, which I guess is shooting the film with a sometimes shockingly wide lens, and the other one is slow, beautiful, complex camera movements, and building the film rather on the blocking and the staging than on the editing, I'd say. And maybe I can ask Darius first. How did you feel about shooting with this crazily wide lens, and how did you feel about the long uncut sequences? Why did you take this choice, and what do you think does it do for the story?
We did this choice, and it was, I think, Alejandro put me into this mood of it all comes from reading the script. When Alejandro told me about the story first on the phone when I was in Paris, and then sent me the script, and I read the script, and I came to Mexico and had these long walks in Mexico and a long conversation with Alejandro little by little, and then we started scouting, and then he told me, he came very gradually, little by little, and then he showed me, how he felt he wanted to tell the story. I think it all came naturally. It was his vision, to see the camera, to see the character, to see the character very important, like in the foreground, and having the landscape, having the city or the desert landscape very present behind, and there's something you can, and being able to move around like this and have this feeling of the world moving around the character, and the presence of the character is something that's really unique of this size of sensor of camera, the gate of the camera, and of the wide angle of the 17 or the 21, those very wide angle lenses. So it was the world of Alejandro, really, that I came in it at the beginning. I was like very surprised, because it's not my even though you always think there's no style, I have no style. I come from a movie with a director, and then I embrace the story, I embrace the way the characters, the story, and what the director wants to go. Even though I say that, it's always a new amazement, of a new world, a new person, a new thing that's doing a movie with someone like Alejandro. So I enter this world. It's like opening a book, and then I enter this world, and I think I gradually got into it, no, Alejandro, and then it became like one person, no, Alejandro, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's very accurate what you are saying. I think in Bardo personally, I have kind of epitomize what I have done and knew before about some grammatic or cinematic language that I have explored before, and inaugurate other things that I did not knew to do. With Darius, we both went into a kind of unknown territory of really trying to find the language to blend sequences. The film is built in 32 sequences, which in a way are blended with sand and water and time. The film is about love and art and death and time. And as a dune, the editing and the way one sequence blend to the other, there is no a chronological order or a logic. It's just kind of a sensation of it. And I think one of the challenges that I have never confronted was not only to shoot with these 17mm lenses and this slow movement that in a way is a constant movement, as life is moving all the time, as music is moving all the time, the impermanence of things always feeling in the movement. And at the same time, I wanted to, how can I say it, like grammatically, in a way, I wanted to surround and penetrate kind of the audiences so that this makings of these scenes are not only mine, but their own. So, I mean, that suddenly you get into the context of the character was so important for Darius and I. So to show the scale of Mexico City, the downtown, the scale of the dance club, the streets that you really are embraced. And I wanted to make almost like a 360-degree mural, right? That, as a dream, the context really have a lot of weight in what you dream is your sensorial experience. And I think the challenge, the work that Darius did was just unbelievable, because honestly, in that department, in that stage, you see 360 degrees in movements all around, and to hide the lights, where you put the lights, and to get that quality of painting that only Darius can give to every detail. It was like canvas, like painting. We depart from very great painters as a reference. But most importantly, beyond the challenges that was technically this film that I have never confronted in any other, not in Revenant, I think this has been the most challenging technical thing and the most successful photography experience that I have had with Darius, that he did an incredible job. I think the most beautiful thing was to achieve the quality of a dream that we wanted, that the light is always telling the story. If you see every frame, the light decision and how the light behaves is literally a narrative element, the light, which is the definition of cinema for us, so that I think was very gratifying,
Yes.
Yeah. No, but it was really my feeling, my very honest feeling that I really felt. I feel from the beginning we did it together. Like when you put a camera, when you put a lens in front of a world that exists already, the character Silverio, Daniel Jimenez Cacho, it was Silverio already. The costume, the hair, his face, his eyes, his gaze, and then the city of downtown Mexico, the desert, the rooms, the places, the production designer, the costume designer, the design, everything was already there. It was there. It's not that I don't want to diminish our work photographically, but when you have this state of grace together, when we play, you feel the band is playing like together in tune. around Alejandro for the story we want to tell. It's a magical moment, you know. It's like the music of the angels, you know. It's something very special, you know. You know what I mean? It's
yes,
like,
I think the film exactly feels like that everything has come together in a magical way, creating one piece of art. And there were so many moments when I really thought, how did they do it? How did they manage to get this party, this room with this camera movement? But also, not only the huge scenes, also there are a lot of intimate scenes, private scenes in which characters have long dialogues. I mean, the acting is stunning throughout the entire film, but I was very touched and surprised by the performances, especially of their two children, Lorenzo and the daughter, who have long, I mean, one shot, one take sequences in which they deliver in a way that is amazing, emotion coming up, going down, you know. How did you do that? Were you brave enough never to shoot other coverage that could have saved your ass and say, okay, I can cut away and do this in the editing room if, you know, I want to combine? Or did you just repeat it so many times until it was perfect? Did you rehearse before shooting? How did you get to this quality of acting?
Well, this took you know, like the longest preparation period that I have. We spent almost 2 years in pre-production, you know. So scenes like even when Silverio's walking in the street and there's a top shot and he arrived to the street and there's a long shadow and that quality of light, that street we have to shoot on March 7 because the light was perfect, that was penetrating the street. And we have to shoot that. That was the scouting location start years in advance to arrive to that hour in the light, and all that downtown where the people fall, the way the sun is there to have this kind of movement of the sun, and then time lapse, and some parties with shadows, sometimes with light. All those decisions were made years in advance, and rehearsal with every dancer, every choreography. So every scene in the kitchen or in the room of Lorenzo or all that, they were rehearsed in advance. I had to stop 2 times the film. Once 10 days before the huge pandemic hit, we were about to shoot, and 10 days before start shooting with all rehearsals and everything, we had to cancel the film. Then we start pre-production 6 months later. We start shooting 10 days, again with pre-production, rehearsals. And then we have to stop because a lot of the crew members, even with all the huge protocols, we collapse and we have to shoot. And then the third time, again, weeks of pre-production. So I have the benefit of the nightmare of the pandemic getting me time to get it better and better and better. Okay. So yes, we rehearse endlessly every little scene so much. And that's why I didn't cover myself, because I knew that was, again, the language, to make you feel there with no TV dialogue. I mean, I'm very much invested in cinematic language. You know, I think we have lost a little bit. I was talking the other day with this obsession that everybody has about the streamings and about if it will be here or that. And obviously, I come from a generation that for me to see a film in a theater is for me the cathedral, is a temple, is very serious. Obviously, it's the best thing that can happen. But we will not stop people seeing films in iPads or computers or whatever. That's not something that I can control. But the only thing that we filmmakers has to really take care is the size of the ideas and the language. And a great book, you can read it in your phone, or you can read it in a beautiful paper. It's a great book. Yeah. And a film is not great because you put it in a big screen. That doesn't, I think it's the language and the ideas behind. So I wanted that the language of this film was that, the constant river moving, and the actors has to deliver, you know, they really need to be present at that moment. And it's very exciting when we arrive to the right take, with the right tempo, with the right rhythm, with the right lighting, with the right camera movement. And that excites us a lot, you know. I think that was a great challenge to and when you achieve it, I'm glad that you appreciate it, because is what I like about it,
Yeah, I would like to ask you about one scene, which was a scene, or rather an image, that touched me tremendously. That's when they're at the beach and they're bringing the vase, the vessel in which they keep Matteo, the child that didn't live. And then she opens the vessel. Luisa takes the little baby in her hands, and all we see is a top shot of the hands pretty close. And she puts the baby into the sand, and the baby starts crawling towards the water, a bit like a baby turtle, and the water comes and the baby. And this crawling baby, I mean, touched me incredibly. And before that, when she holds it in her hands, I was really waiting for the close-up of her to see her face, how she looks at her child that didn't live, see the close-up of his face, how he looks at it, how he might look at her, and the brother and the sister, how everybody, looks at that. And you didn't do that. And at first I was a bit, I felt like I haven't been served what I deserve. But then I thought maybe my very strong emotional reaction to the image of the baby crawling in the sand is also because you haven't showed me their emotions. So that's why my emotion was piling up. And I was projecting my emotion much more strongly onto that image of the crawling baby than I would have done if I would have seen their faces before. Is that something that you intended, or is that just my fantasy?
Yes, I think you are right. I think always one of the biggest questions as a director that I have, and I think the most challenging question for a director, is which point of view you're going to tell something. And I want to put people in the shoes or in the head, in this case of Lucia, trying to imagine what she is imagining. So the film is an allegory, our own lives are allegories of what we think our life was or is. So this is an allegory of them liberating a wound and a pain from an allegory, from a metaphor that they will love to imagine, how they are kind of liberating the ideas. She said, so Silverio said, when people pass away, when our people that we love pass away, the people is gone. It's the ideas that stay. So those ideas that we are attached, that can be painful or can be pleasant or can be funny or can be whatever, those ideas, to detach from those ideas when they are creating something, that's what I wanted to exorcise in my personal life. My wife and I lost the baby when we were very, very young, and this has been having a toll in our lives. And then obviously we have our second kid, went into a very difficult situation too, as born as that. So we were trying to overcome a trauma. And I think I always said that art, it's made because life is a fuck up, right? So, life is not perfect. And that's why we create music or books, or we write something, or we make a movie to in a way, at least to dream, to have a control or a metaphoric way to allow us to liberate things as we want. And this was a way for me in the movie, through this fictionalized moment of putting you, in this case, and I'm happy that it happened to you, to make it your own experience. And if you put them, any family member that you have lost, or anybody that you, is a way to make people. And one of the most beautiful things is when I present the film and somebody come to me and share that experience that you're saying, and they put words in somebody that they put themselves in that scene of their own lives, makes me very happy. Make me very happy, because then I don't feel alone anymore. So that's what you make films, to connect with. So it's a grammatical, again, making a point in cinema language. I think that's why it's so important to be really, really specific about it. And that's how it's useful about it.
And I would like to ask about another scene that you mentioned actually before. It's the opening moment of the movie, when we see a landscape, desert-like landscape, could be at the border of Mexico and the United States. And we see it's a low sun, very long shadows, and we see a shadow, jumping, flying, coming back. And on the third attempt to jump, the shadow flies away. And at the end, we realize that it's not only the opening, but it's also the final image of the film. And that's maybe just the technical, but I was really wondering, how did you shoot that? Where is the shadow of the camera? Is the shadow a CGI shadow? Is the entire picture a CGI thing? How did you do that?
It took us a long time, right, Darius?
Yeah, it's a mix of things. It took us a long time, but for me, it started from your words, from what you wanted to do. And you know, when I read the script and you tell me about the different moments, the different things, how, you know, we discuss how we were going to do it. Everything, of course, at the beginning sounded like very difficult, like a challenge, very difficult. And then little by little, we enter it. And as you said, we prepared, and everything was so well prepared for so long, you know, that we ended up, you know, shooting everything and make everything possible. But for this, for the shadow, for me, I keep on talking about this image I have of Silverio in the theater, you know, hanging by cables, with this light on him projecting his shadow in movement and capturing this shadow. Do you remember, Alejandro?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
For me, this image is such a emblematic image, like beginning of cinema, of the beginning of, it was really like a silhouette of him, like a bird, like flying, you know, with cables, and us, we're looking at this, at the shadow, and how we're trying to, and we're also you know, lighting, creating this very long shadow in a theater. But this was just as a reference. It was just, we were filming it too, but we're just watching it more like a reference thing to understand what we were going to do after in the desert. So for me, it all started like this. It started with the actor, you know, the real actor with his real shadow. And then you discover that his shadow is very sublime, is very stylized, you know, it's very, very long. It takes proportion that you never would imagine. The shadow of a human being, of a man, a human being, suddenly projected at the sun at a certain angle, at the surface of the globe, it becomes a different thing. It becomes like a bird, like a very tall, long bird taking its flight, you know. So it was all very metaphorical. It was very interesting. And then it was also very technical. It was a very technical thing. And then it was only the beginning of a layer, you know. And then I think the shadow was just different layers for us, don't you think, Alejandro? Then we were in the desert, with the early morning in the desert, with the cold air of the early morning, the very beginning of light. And we, for me, it's very magical. It's created with layers of things together. So it's not only a visual effects shot.
No, it was technical, but I think for me the most mysterious thing is that when I was writing the script, that was the first image that came to me. And the reason is because I have had that dream many times in my life, and it comes in periods. And sometimes I dream that exact dream that I'm flying, but always my flight is very close to the ground and is super pleasant. I swear that I can fly. And even I kind of wake up and I have this lucid dream that was my goal in this film, that is like a lucid dream, that you know that you are dreaming and you hate when somebody wake you up because you are enjoying the dream, even when you know that you are dreaming. And when that happened to me, it's a little dangerous because any false move, I can fall. So when I start writing the script, that scene came naturally. And I didn't have a plan. I didn't have like, okay, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know nothing. But now that I see it, funny enough that it's exactly what I told you in the beginning. The film, it's kind of an attempt to look for a shadowy, phantasmagorical present that end up with the same scene at the end. Obviously talking about our last migration, that will be, we all will die, no matter which nationality, color of skin, or if you're Republican or whatever political beliefs or religion, we all will have that migration. And this shadow is just another thing. But to make it happen, it was funny because I always feel that the first 2 minutes of the film say it all. And I think that scene, now that I see it, I'm so grateful that is the opening scene. And then Silverio waiting in that corridor in the hospital, that it reminded me my experience so much about just dreaming all the places that you would like to be and not in that fucking place. But that scene for me established what this film is about, which is about shadows, right? It's about, and I wrote it and I said, oh, that's cool. And then when it's like, how do we shoot it? I was like, oh my God. And then we spent 1 year trying to do it in blue screens with digital shadow, with blah, blah. So then to get that location is in Vizcaíno. Vizcaíno is the heart of the desert of the peninsula desert in Mexico, of California. It took us like, it's 8 hours from the airport. There's nothing but just a tiny hotel. So to arrive there was a nightmare, but to get that location is so special that there's nothing. And then we did it with finally, after many discussions with a lot of technical things, we did it with an incredible drone, an operator, after several takes and several days for the light to be perfect. And then early on in the rehearsals and pre-production, we hang Daniel Jimenez Cacho with arnés, and we shot and project the shadow in the stage. And then we put mocap, a suit with mocap, and all the movements of him digitally went to a computer to emulate his real shadow. And then the real shadow was as long as it is. Anyway, it was a blend of things, but in a way, what I'm saying is I naively said, okay, a shadow flying. Okay, now how are you going to shoot?
Look, it doesn't feel technical at all. It feels exactly like your naive image of a shadow flying, because that's what it is, even though it took all that effort. So it's beautiful. And it brings me to my next question, because if you look at this film, it's such a vast amount of work. And I wonder, how did you feel before the film, looking at the task that is awaiting you, which then must have felt like a mountain that is impossible to climb? And I'm wondering, what's your way of keeping everything together? How do you get what you need? I mean, there's pushy directors, there are charming directors, there are manipulative directors, there are persistent. I mean, so what's your way, how to make sure that you will end up with what you envisioned?
By doing exactly all what you have just said.
Okay.
You have to be sometimes this, as Orson Welles sometimes that everything that has been said about me, at some point it was true. Okay. Because we are all of that, depending on which day, right? We have been like manipulative, we have been kind of angry, or we all that mosaic, we all as human beings are that, depending in where it must be true at some point. So it's all those things. I think the most important thing is that, honestly, because I have opportunity to work in the film so long, I have a very clear vision what it was needed. I didn't know how to get it. And that's why I got the best people in the world as Darius. Without Darius, I would have never discovered that it can be even never I have dreamed to arrive to that amount, that image. Or Eugenio Caballero, or Ana Terrazo. So the team that we have was, we didn't know how to get as the example of the shadow. But the only thing that I feel good about it is that I was so clear in what it was needed. Yeah. I just need to discover it. I just need to shape the stone to discover what I knew it was there. And all the film was a storyboard. It's the first film in my life that every frame is storyboard. And if I show you the storyboard, are so beautiful, made by a guy that is called Edgar Clement, that is incredible. They were so precise. And we did rehearsals in every location. So all the departments nobody read the script, but everybody knew what it was needed visually in every single frame. So the fact that it was a clarity of what we were looking for, and we all have to discover by failing, trying. And it was the excitement. And for me to return to Mexico after 20 years after Amores Perros and go back to my country and adapted myself to my fellow and colleagues, filmmakers, and they were saying, oh, this guy arrived, he is too Hollywood now, and whatever expectations they have of me or misunderstandings, and whatever expectations I have from there and my own misunderstandings and prejudice, that reunion was very exciting, that to adapt ourselves to both expectations. And anyway, there was something very important in that process, I think.
Darius, can I ask you, how does Alejandro get what he needs? What are his...
I was listening to Alejandro saying, I was really thinking, because one of my god is Orson Welles, and I really imagine Orson Welles must have been something that kind of texture as a film director, very, obsessed by things that they had to be done this way, but we didn't know any other way to do it. But Alejandro pushed it and pushed it. I remember going to the desert, where a certain desert in the middle of all this desert, a certain desert is nowhere else is different. The relief, the mountain, the skyline of the actually earth is a certain way, and the grass is a certain way, and the color of the sand is a certain way, and we had to go there to do it, at a certain time and a certain light. I mean, it's just, you don't make a film like this by chance, and I would never be able to photograph a film like this without Alejandro. Alejandro is, and so I was smiling listening to him, because it's really made up of a different quality, different skills that the director had to have, and when you have them all together, it's like a composer, you just have to play in tune, I don't know how to say it to make it more clear, but like I remember climbing the mountain, the Steadicam, the Trinity, what we call the monster, climbing up this crazy top mountain, a shot that you don't think are possible, but they had to be done like that,
Okay.
You couldn't put any gigantic crane to do such a long shot like this around our actor and being with him up to the moment and discovering the scope of the desert at that time. This thing that exists only once. Alejandro wanted it to be there. We wanted it to be there anyway. I think what most important thing, Alejandro, is that he communicates this to us. Once you communicate this, then you have people around you, like I always think of Joan of Arc, like following, I felt a bit like this, I'm sure Eugenio too, and Anna too, and the camera crew too.
Well, I still have about 1 million questions, but we have more than 130 people listening in, and they have been writing their questions in the chat, and Maria has been going through the questions, and yes, in order to open up the discussion to everybody, Maria, why don't you come in with a couple of questions that are coming from the audience?
We have a couple of very interesting questions. First of all, from the editing department, there was a question, how do you, Alejandro, you edited the film yourself together with Monica Salazar. Would you like to say something about the editing process and how you find your rhythm? Somebody actually asked if you use a pendulum to find the rhythm of the film, but you already explained you had a storyboard. So how is the process in the editing to find the rhythm for the film?
It was actually not so difficult, because again, the film was, it was kind of faithfully laid out the same way the script was kind of constructed and built. The architecture was kind of set up from the beginning. There was long takes, obviously, so you have to just to define which take is the best one. That you lose sometimes when you choose one, or the movement, the performance. The blendings of one sequence to the other was challenging to find the right rhythm and the right movement and the right colors. I mean, there was these kind of things that you are threading more than an editing. I can say that this was kind of a threading, like very delicate kind of thing. There was no clashes or sounds clashing one to the other. If you see my first 3-4 films, always I was handheld 40mm things, clashing the editing, provoking people. This I wanted to be like just like a river, like a constant flow of consciousness. So to get that, like butter, like oil, like how to put oil. Monica and I were working always in the temperature of the color of the things. So it was a delicate process. My first cut was like 4 hours and 30 minutes. So I had to took out a lot of sequences that I was in love with them, that they were fantastic. I loved them, but didn't help the internal rhythm of the whole movie. So that was very challenging to let them go, again, the uncertainty, and to surrender to what really is good for. That was challenging. And lastly, I will say that I always felt or approach a film musically. Like, I need to know if it's a rock piece, like Amores Perros for me was like a Sticky Fingers from the Rolling Stones, very harsh, very, 21 Grams was a jazz piece. What I'm saying, I always need to know what is the genre musically and the rhythm of that film. And for me, this film, it's something that I love, that is progressive rock. All these albums like The Lamb Lies Down of Broadway, of Genesis, or Jazz, or King Crimson, or Pink Floyd, all these incredible albums that were created as a story, not like singles, not like pop music, but like with an umbrella, with a story, and they were blended, and the song blend with the next one and the next one, and it's a thematic opera kind of thing. I want this film to feel like that, like in the tradition. So my always was thinking like, okay, this is not a scene and then the next scene, like singles in a pop album that I detest. I like when there's like a story to be told. So I approach this as a Genesis album, let's put it that way. So that was my musical theory behind that. It was not very understandable or comfortable necessarily, or standard, but it just have its own moves,
There were already 2 questions from the composing department of the Academy, because people are very curious to hear how you work with your composer and how do you find the sounds and the music especially. Maybe you've already explained a little, but maybe you want to go a little bit deeper.
Well, it's interesting. I work with Bryce Dessner in Revenant. He did the 3rd act of Revenant. I discovered him in a contemporary classical music performance he did in LA with Gustavo Dudamel in the Disney Hall. And I said, holy shit, who is this guy that composed an incredible violin piece? And then I realized that it was Bryce Dessner from the National, so he played pop music too. And then he has been with Steve Reich in jazz. So in a way, this guy is kind of incredible musician. So we became friends since there. And I knew that the sound of this film has to be metals, like trumpets and tubas and trombone. And the reason is because in Mexico, there is this ancient tradition of these old towns where these guys play these beautiful songs that are very similar to the Serbian music or the Jewish music, but the Mexican music has this kind of, and it's a music that you can hear it in a funeral, but you can hear it in a wedding. It makes you happy, or it can make you sad and nostalgic depending on the context, and it's always exquisitely out of tune, which you can never get that from great musicians. So is this melancholy of these humble things, and I knew that, but at the same time cannot be super folkloric. I wanted to add some contemporary design and sound to that feeling. So I invite Bryce, and we start, by need, I start whistling tunes, because my father, he was a great whistler, and I want that integrated in the story of the film. If you remember, this guy is looking for that whistle that the father sing for him to be calmed down, and that happened to me, but I don't remember the whistle. I would love to have that, and my father always had this whistle. So I start having some tunes by myself, and I sent it to Bryce, and Bryce loved them, and I said, let's make these the melodies of that. So that's why I became involved with Bryce, because I'm a frustrated musician, and he invited me to his journey and to share this with, and we went to Mexico. We record with the Oaxacan band, and Bryce geniusly, he put the score in the back of these guys because he wants to have them moving, and all of them were playing, looking to the partiture in the back of the other, and we were having fun. And it was a terrific experience to working with that. But that was the spirit that we were trying to get, you know.
Thank you for that answer. I hand over to Florian. I know you have another question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, we as filmmakers, we are convinced that success is so important for us, because if you're not successful, films are so expensive, then you will never make a film again. And there is this scene when he is at the party, the Minister of the Interior asks him to come on stage. He escapes, chickens out, goes to the bathroom, meets his father, his deceased father in the bathroom, becomes small again, not a child, not young, but small again, talks to the father, which is very beautiful. And the father says, so if something to the extent that if he has success, you know, it's important to take a good sip, taste the success in your mouth, but then you have to spit it out, otherwise it's going to poison you, which I find is very beautiful. Now, you both have had huge amounts of success. I mean, success to an extent that we are all dreaming of. Did you take a good sip? Did you taste it? And did you spit it out, or has it poisoned you?
Darius, are you poisoned?
No, I don't think so. I never feel I know I don't success, or I never really think like that. I never. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I hope not. I don't know.
No,
it's a good question. I just don't think like that about. I look at other people's success, but I never think about myself in it. I'm just looking at movie, at cinema. You know, I love cinema. So
yeah,
success is something about your own ego, your own thing, and I don't know.
Yeah, I think that for me, there's a theme that obviously I think it's integrated in the film, which is the success, how it changed. At least for me, the way I see it, this was a line of my father, and I was raised in a Catholic tradition. And in Catholicism, some of you are Catholic, you know that in Catholicism, you have to be the last to be the first, as Christ, and to be successful or rich is not precisely something that you admire. It's a risky kind of thing that can swallow your soul and can get you to trouble. So you have to be careful. And I always was educated until that thing. So, I mean, success was paradoxically something that you should desire and work for, but at the same time to be careful and actually sometimes even being afraid of. And that was a very conflicted kind of for me. My father has a tough relation with success, and he always said that line, which I think he's absolutely right. If you give so much value and if your self-esteem is given to the others' opinions, then obviously your success will be always in shaking territory. But no matter what, as Silverio said in the living room, I found myself sometimes, I guess as many of you, sometimes wanting to be appreciated and needed to be understood or to be recognized or to be loved, right? That's what we do things, to be loved. And sometimes even actually the most complicated is that we look appreciation from people that do not appreciate us, or even from people that we do not appreciate. So awards and all those things in a way is a very double sword, because you want them, but you feel shame about it. As Darius said, it's an ego thing. So it's a complicated relation. Everybody that said, I don't care about our recognition is a liar. Yes, we all want to be recognized. Yeah. But at what extent? And then the most difficult thing for me, and this is things that I took in the film because it's personal, is that when you realize that success and failure are impostors, both of them are mirages. You run in the desert thinking, oh, that's water. And then when you arrive and get that, is a mirage. It was an hallucination. And most of us are educated since we are kids that when you arrive to success, it will change your life, your economical situation. But if you have interior doubts, fragility, loneliness, whatever, anxiety, it will not change that. And that can be very tough, because then you realize that there's no a finite line that success is actually a path, that you have to be happy with what you have. And that's real success. And that rely on you, not in what other people will give you. But that takes time to realize. If you're a young guy, somebody can tell you that and you will say, oh, fuck you. I want to be that. In a way, when you are a privileged and you have had some success, and you don't have to win an award of film. Any success that any lawyer, any taxi driver, any whatever journalist had, you know that it's impermanent, it's useless in some way to fix the real things. And that's what the film talks about. That's what I found myself, you know.
Well, I think that's a wonderful final words, especially as we are just before the Oscars and running up for the Oscars. I think we are at the end of our time, Maria, or do you want to squeeze in another question? I don't know, you have to go, I guess, right?
We have like, well, it's already 1 minute to 9 o'clock, but it's a very easy question. Maybe to answer quickly. Somebody from the documentary department asked, why did you choose a documentary filmmaker and not a fiction filmmaker for your alter ego in the movies? Is there a reason for that?
I found filmmakers very boring. You know, filmmakers' lives are very boring and very ordinary, and and I know many. And I found that the journalist, in a way, when you make a film, you do a lot of research. And when I did Carne y Arena of migration or Babel thing, you find yourself doing sometimes research, and you do some kind of journalism work of investigating things. So I thought about the idea that the journalist, in a way, have the ability to make himself available in other things that is not just fiction, is touching reality, and obviously making a reflection of my own life that in birth from fiction, I can just jump sometimes to journalists. But I thought that was much more interesting, that he is a guy who was looking for truth as his job, wanting facts and truth. And then he, in a crisis, finds himself that all our narratives and nothing is true, that we just create our own memories and our own narratives. And the crisis of a journalist in search of truth, being uncertain, was that terrace conversation. And I wanted to be in that crisis of uncertainty. I found that it was more interesting than just a guy that made fiction, because then you know that the only way to arrive to truth is through fiction, you know, to elevate. When you fictionalize that, fiction in a way in light what obviously reality hides. Anyway, I found that the life of a journalist that is trying to become a fictional guy, to try to invent his own reality. And as he said, I'm not interested in truth or what I think, I'm interested in what I feel. So it was an inverse position that I thought would be interesting. That's why I choose to be that kind of docu fiction guy, you know.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid we have to let you go. We have so many more questions, but it's 9 o'clock and we promised we'll be on time.
Thank you so much for this wonderful talk, Darius and Alejandro. And even more, thank you so much for your wonderful films. I can just say they have made my life richer. They have given hope to me as a filmmaker. They have provoked thoughts and questions inside of me. So I really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your wonderful films, and fingers crossed for the success at the Oscars.
Thank you very much to all of you for your time. Thank you. It has been a pleasure.
We have many thanks here from many members, and we send love and courage and good luck to you, to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being.
Darius, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Bye. Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you, all of you.